The ancient world of Krell Prime hung in space like a gray jewel, dead for millions of years. Its surface was covered in ruins that stretched across entire continents, remnants of a civilization so advanced that modern galactic species could barely understand their technology. 3 months ago, a mining expedition had discovered something in the largest temple complex on the planet's northern hemisphere. It was a suit of armor standing alone in a vast circular chamber untouched by time. Word spread quickly through the galaxy. The Council, a governing body representing hundreds of alien species, sent their best scientists to examine the discovery. They confirmed what everyone hoped but feared to believe. The armor belonged to the Precursors, the mysterious ancient race that had vanished without explanation eons ago. Every spacefaring civilization knew the legends. The Precursors had built wonders that defied physics, traveled between galaxies, and then simply disappeared, leaving behind only ruins and questions. The armor itself was beautiful in a terrifying way. It stood 3 meters tall, made from a metal that seemed to shift colors in the light, flowing between silver, gold, and deep blue. Its design was both elegant and powerful, with smooth curves that suggested speed and sharp angles that promised violence. The helmet was closed, hiding whatever face it had been made for. But the most remarkable thing about the armor was not its appearance. It was the fact that no one could touch it. An energy field surrounded the armor, invisible but deadly. The first scientist who tried to approach it was thrown backward with such force that his bones shattered. Others tried with protective suits, robots, and energy shields. Nothing worked. The armor rejected everything that came near it. Scanners showed that the field was reading something in those who approached, judging them by standards no one understood, and finding them all wanting. The Council made a decision. They would turn this into a trial. If the armor sought someone worthy, then let the galaxy's greatest warriors compete for the honor. A call went out to every world, every species, every champion who believed they had what it took to claim the Sentinel's aegis, as the armor came to be called. They came by the thousands, warriors in powered exoskeletons, psychic monks who could move mountains with their minds, ancient beings who had lived for centuries and fought in 100 wars. They came with confidence, pride, and ambition. The armor rejected them all. Some were simply pushed away. Others were less fortunate. A Vraxian warlord named Torin, famous across 12 systems for never losing a battle, approached the armor with his head held high. The field activated with a sound like thunder, and Toran was hurled across the chamber so hard that his armored exoskeleton cracked like an egg. He survived, but barely. After 3 months of failures, hope began to fade. Scientists studied the armor day and night, trying to understand what it wanted. They measured brain waves, genetic markers, hormone levels, and spiritual resonance. Nothing made sense. The armor's criteria seemed random, yet everyone knew there had to be a pattern. The Precursors did nothing without reason. It was during the 4th month that the human ship arrived. The Heidel was a small exploration vessel, nothing impressive by galactic standards. Humans were newcomers to the interstellar community, having only developed faster-than-light travel 150 years ago. Most alien species saw them as insignificant, too young and too weak to matter in galactic affairs. The Heidel carried a diplomatic team sent by Earth to observe the trials and report back. Among the crew was a young engineer named Doyen. Doyen was 28 years old, thin and unremarkable by human standards, and completely out of his depth among alien warriors and ancient mysteries. He had been assigned to the mission because of his specialty in analyzing unknown technology, not because anyone expected humans to play any significant role. He spent his first week on Krell Prime taking measurements, running scans, and watching warrior after warrior fail to claim the armor. Captain Miri, the commander of the Heidel, was a practical woman who had no interest in ancient legends or impossible challenges. She kept her crew close and warned them not to draw attention. Humans had few friends in the galaxy, and many species still resented their rapid expansion into space. The last thing she wanted was for one of her people to embarrass themselves in front of the Council. But Doyen could not stop watching the armor. While others saw only failures, he saw patterns. He noticed that the energy field did not activate the same way for every species. With some, it reacted instantly, violently. With others, there was a delay, as if the armor was considering before rejecting them. He began recording the field's energy fluctuations with his scanner, building a database of responses. On the 15th day after the Heidel's arrival, Doyen made a discovery that made his hands shake as he rechecked his calculations. The energy field's baseline frequency matched human neural patterns almost perfectly. Not exactly, but close enough that it could not be coincidence. He ran the numbers again and again, afraid he had made a mistake, but the results were clear. When the armor scanned approaching beings, it was looking for something in their brain structure, and whatever it sought was remarkably similar to human neurology. Doyen brought his findings to Captain Mireille in her quarters aboard the ship. She listened with a deepening frown as he explained the data, showing her graphs and frequency analyses that meant nothing to her but everything to him. "You are saying the armor might accept a human?" she asked when he finished. "I am saying it is possible," Doyen replied carefully. "The precursors might have had brain structures similar to ours. Or maybe they programmed the armor to look for specific traits that humans possess." Mireille shook her head. "And what happens when you are wrong? We have watched that thing kill or cripple some of the strongest beings in the galaxy. You think it will be gentle with a human? I think we will never know unless someone tries. Then let it be someone else. You are not a warrior, Doyen. You are an engineer. This is not your fight." But Doyen could not let it go. That night he lay in his bunk aboard the Heidel and thought about the armor standing alone in that vast chamber. Millions of years it had waited, rejecting everyone who came before it. What was it waiting for? What did the precursors want? He thought about humanity's short history in space, how they had struggled and fought to earn their place among the stars. He thought about all the species who looked down on humans as weak and insignificant, and he thought about the pattern in the data, the undeniable connection between the armor's energy field and human brain waves. The next morning, without telling Captain Mireille or anyone else, Doyen left the Heidel and walked alone to the great temple. It was time to find out if the armor had been waiting for a human all along. The great chamber where the armor stood was never empty. Scientists, diplomats, and curious observers from dozens of species filled the space at all hours, watching and waiting for the next trial. When Doyen entered through the massive doorway, heads turned. A human, alone and wearing nothing but a simple jumpsuit, walking toward the observation platform. Some aliens laughed. Others simply ignored him, returning to their conversations and calculations. Doyen felt his heart hammering in his chest, but he forced himself to walk steadily forward. He had his scanner in one hand and his datapad in the other, though his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold them. The armor stood in the center of the room, 300 meters away, on a raised platform surrounded by monitoring equipment and warning barriers. "Human, you are not authorized to be here alone," a mechanical voice called out. Doyen looked up to see Council Arbiter Velis, an insectoid creature with multiple eyes and clicking mandibles, approaching from the observation deck. "Where is your captain?" "I need to speak with you about the armor," Doyen said, his voice barely steady. "I have found something important." Velis tilted its head in what might have been curiosity or annoyance. "Many believe they have found something important. What makes you different?" Doyen held up his datapad with trembling hands. "The armor's energy field operates on a specific frequency. I have been measuring it for 2 weeks. The pattern matches human neural activity. I think the precursors had brain structures similar to ours, or they programmed the armor to seek traits that humans have." Velis took the datapad with one of its thin limbs and studied it. Several other council members approached, drawn by the conversation. Among them was Toran, the Vraxian warlord who had nearly died trying to claim the armor. His exoskeleton was still cracked and partially repaired, but his pride seemed fully intact. "A human thinks he can succeed where I failed?" Toran's voice was like grinding rocks. "You are barely half my size. Your species has no warriors worth mentioning. What makes you think you are worthy?" "I do not think I am worthy," Doyen said quietly. "I just think the armor might be looking for someone like me instead of someone like you." The chamber fell silent. No one spoke to Toran that way. The Vraxian warrior stepped forward, his massive frame towering over Doyen, but Velis raised a limb between them. "Interesting," the Arbiter said, still studying the data. "Your measurements are thorough, but correlation is not causation. Many species have similar neural patterns. This proves nothing." "Then let me try," Doyen said. The words came out before he could stop them. Laughter erupted from the aliens around him. The idea of a human, weak and insignificant, Attempting what thousands of the galaxy's greatest warriors had failed to do seemed absurd. But Velis did not laugh. The Arbiter studied Doyen with its multiple eyes, seeing something that others missed. "You understand the risk?" Velis asked. "The armor has killed before. Your species is fragile." "I understand." "Very well. The Council will permit this attempt. But know that we do so only because we have exhausted all other options. If you fail, your captain will be very angry with me for allowing you to die." Doyen nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He walked toward the armor and the crowd fell silent, all eyes on the small human crossing the vast chamber. With each step, his fear grew, but so did his certainty. The data did not lie. The armor was connected to human neurology somehow. He had to believe that meant something. He reached the warning barriers and stepped over them. Alarms should have sounded, but Velis had silenced them. Doyen was alone now, just him and the armor, 30 meters apart. He could feel the energy, feel from here, a pressure in the air that made his skin tingle and his hair stand on end. Behind him, someone shouted for him to stop, to come back. He recognized Captain Mireille's voice. She must have discovered he was missing and tracked him here. But Doyen could not stop now. He took another step, then another. The energy field began to glow, a faint red light surrounding the armor. This was the warning phase. Everyone who had approached had seen this red light before the field attacked them. Doyen stopped walking and closed his eyes. He thought about why he had come to space in the first place. His dream of understanding the mysteries left behind by ancient civilizations. He thought about humanity's struggle to prove itself worthy of respect among the stars. He thought about the armor waiting here for millions of years, searching for someone or something that never came, until now. He opened his eyes and took another step. The red light flickered, shifting to orange, then amber. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No one had ever seen the field change colors before. Doyen's breath caught in his throat. It was working. The armor was considering him, actually considering him instead of immediately rejecting him. He raised his hand slowly and reached out toward the armor. The field shifted again, from amber to yellow, then to a pale blue. The pressure in the air changed from threatening to almost welcoming. Doyen felt tears in his eyes as he realized what was happening. After millions of years, the armor had found someone it would accept. "Impossible," someone whispered behind him. Doyen touched the armor's chest plate with one trembling finger. The metal was warm, almost alive. The energy field vanished instantly, and the armor began to move. Pieces separated and flowed like liquid metal, unfolding and reaching toward him. Doyen gasped as metallic tendrils wrapped around his arms, his legs, his chest. There was no pain, only a strange sensation of connection, as if the armor was learning him, understanding him at a level deeper than thought. The helmet piece rose and opened like a flower. Doyen had one moment to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. Then the helmet closed around his head, and everything changed. Light exploded through his mind, not painful but overwhelming, like standing in the sun after a lifetime in darkness. Information flooded his consciousness. Words in languages he should not understand but somehow did. Images of worlds that no longer existed. Battles fought against enemies whose names were lost to time. And a warning, urgent and clear. "They are returning." The voice spoke directly into his thoughts, neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It was the armor itself speaking to him through their connection. "Who is returning?" Doyen tried to speak aloud, but the armor understood his thoughts. "The enemy that drove us away, the Void Collective. They consume everything. We left these tools for the ones who would come after us, the ones with the courage to stand when all seems lost. You are not what we expected, but you are what we needed." The connection faded slightly and Doyen became aware of the chamber again. He was standing in the armor now, seeing through its helmet, feeling its power thrumming through every piece. He felt strong in a way he had never imagined, as if he could move mountains or fight armies. But he also felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like chains. He turned to face the crowd of shocked aliens staring at him. Captain Mirai stood at the front, her face pale with fear and wonder. Torin had dropped to one knee, his head bowed in a gesture Doyen did not understand. Velis approached slowly, mandibles clicking rapidly. "What has happened?" the Arbiter asked. "What did it show you?" Doyen took a breath, feeling the armor amplify his voice so that everyone in the chamber could hear him clearly. "The precursors did not vanish. They left. And the reason they left is coming back." The chamber erupted in chaos, voices shouting questions in a dozen languages. But Doyun stood still in the center of it all, wearing armor that had waited millions of years for this moment. Carrying a warning that would change everything the galaxy thought it knew about its past and its future, the trial was over. The armor had chosen, and now the real challenge would begin. The first 3 days after the armor accepted Doyen were chaos. News spread through the galaxy at light speed, transmitted through the communications network that connected thousands of worlds. A human had claimed the Sentinel's aegis. A human, member of a species barely 2 centuries into space travel, wearing armor that belonged to the most advanced civilization ever known. Reactions varied wildly across the galaxy. Some species celebrated, seeing it as a sign that worthiness had nothing to do with age or military power. Others were outraged, viewing it as an insult to the ancient warrior cultures that had tried and failed. The Vraxian Empire, still nursing wounded pride after Toran's defeat, demanded that the armor be surrendered to the Council for study. The Council itself was divided, with some members calling for Doyen to be protected and others insisting he be detained for questioning. Through it all, Doyen remained on Krell Prime, learning to use the armor. It was not like putting on a suit. The armor was alive in ways he could not fully explain, connected to his thoughts and responding to his intentions before he could voice them. When he wanted to move, the armor amplified his strength 100-fold. When he felt threatened, shields activated automatically. And always in the back of his mind he felt the presence of something vast and ancient, watching and guiding him. Captain Mirai had been furious with him at first, shouting about unauthorized risks and reckless behavior that could have gotten him killed. But her anger faded when she saw what the armor could do. Doyen demonstrated by lifting a block of stone that weighed 10 tons, moving it as easily as if it were made of paper. She had no words for that. Hyun, the Haidal's security officer and Doyen's closest friend, took a different approach. He had known Doyen for 5 years, ever since they served together on a mining station near Mars. Where others saw Doyen as shy and uncertain, Hyun had always seen someone who thought deeply before acting. When Doyen explained about the warning the armor had given him, about the Void Collective returning, Hyun believed him without question. "So what do we do?" Hyun asked. They were standing in the great chamber, now cleared of observers by council order. Only essential personnel remained, and Doyen had requested privacy to explore the armor's capabilities. "I need to access the precursor database," Doyen said. "The armor showed me fragments, images of what they faced. But there is more information stored in systems across this planet. I can feel it, like threads connecting back to a central library. If I can reach it, we might learn how to fight what is coming." "Then let us find it," Hyun said simply. They spent the next 2 days exploring the ruins of Krell Prime. The armor guided Doyen through ancient corridors that had been sealed for millions of years, opening doors that had resisted all previous attempts to breach them. Hyun followed, weapon ready, though Doyen suspected nothing on this dead world posed any real threat. The armor's sensors detected no life forms, no active security systems, nothing but endless ruins and sleeping technology waiting to be awakened. They found the database in a structure the size of a mountain, buried beneath the planet's northern ice cap. When Doyen touched the entrance with his armored hand, the entire building came to life. Lights flickered on in sequences that stretched into the distance, and holographic displays activated, filling the air with images and text in the precursor language that only Doyen could read. "What does it say?" Hyun asked, staring at the floating symbols. "Everything," Doyen whispered. "This is their entire history. Millions of years of knowledge, technology, wars, and wisdom. And here at the end, the records of the Void Collective." The images changed, showing something that made Doyen's blood run cold even through the armor's protection. The Void Collective was not a species in any normal sense. It was a hive mind that consumed other species, breaking them down and incorporating their biological and technological distinctiveness into itself. Where it passed, entire civilizations vanished, converted into more of the void. It grew exponentially, spreading like a plague across galaxies. The precursors had fought the void for 10,000 years. They won battles but could never win the war. For every void ship destroyed, 10 more grew to take its place. Finally, the precursors made a choice. They could not defeat the void, but they could escape it. They evolved beyond physical form, transcending into something the database called pure consciousness, and fled to higher dimensions where the void could not follow. But before they left, they prepared. They built weapons and tools, storing them across 100 worlds, hidden and protected. They programmed their technology to recognize the traits they valued most: adaptability, creativity, the ability to find hope in darkness, and to accept only those who embodied these qualities. The armor was one such tool, the greatest of them all, designed to interface with precursor systems and coordinate a defense against the void if it ever returned. They knew it would come back, Doyen said, his voice hollow. They left all this technology hoping someone would be here to use it when that happened. And they chose you, Jan said. Why? Not me specifically, humans. The armor explained it while we were connecting. The precursors studied the emerging species in the galaxy before they left. They saw potential in humanity, the way we adapt and refuse to give up even when we should. They programmed the armor to seek those traits. That is insane. Humans were barely out of caves when the precursors left. They were thinking millions of years ahead. They knew we would evolve. A warning signal flashed across the holographic displays. Doyen focused on it, and the armor translated the information instantly. Ships were approaching Krell Prime. Military vessels, dozens of them, and their identification codes marked them as Vraxian. They are coming for the armor, Hyan said, checking his weapon. No, Doyen said, reading deeper into the sensor data. They are coming for me. The attack came that night. 20 Vraxian warriors, elite soldiers in powered armor, breached the temple complex while Doyen slept in a chamber the armor had designated as safe. They moved silently, their equipment designed to avoid detection. But they had not counted on the armor itself. Doyen woke to find himself already standing, the armor having activated while he slept. The chamber was dark, but his sensors showed him everything. 20 heat signatures approaching through the corridors, weapons charged and ready. The armor spoke in his mind, calm and certain. They intend harm. Defend yourself. I do not want to kill them, Doyen thought back. Then do not, but you must stop them. The Vraxians burst through the door, weapons firing. Energy bolts struck Doyen's shields and dissipated harmlessly. He moved without thinking, the armor guiding his actions. One warrior lunged with a blade that could cut through steel. Doyen caught the blade with his bare hand, the armor absorbing the force, and threw the warrior across the room without injuring him. The fight lasted less than a minute. Doyen disabled every attacker without killing any of them, though several would need medical attention for broken bones and concussions. When it was over, he stood among the unconscious Vraxians, breathing hard, his mind racing. He had moved faster than thought, reacted to threats before his conscious mind registered them. The armor was changing him, making him into something more than he had been. Captain Mireille arrived with Council security forces 10 minutes later. She surveyed the scene with a grim expression, then looked at Doyen. This will not be the last attempt, she said. Half the galaxy wants that armor, and they will do anything to take it. We need to leave Krell Prime. No, Doyen said. We need to prepare. The database shows the Void's last known location. They were pushed back to the galactic edge beyond explored space. But if they are returning, we need to know when and where they will strike first. I need more time to learn the precursor systems. Then we will buy you that time, Jan said. But Captain Mireille is right. You need protection. Real protection, not just the two of us. Doyen nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand the burden the precursors had left him. The armor was not just a tool or a weapon. It was a responsibility that would define the rest of his life. He had become something the galaxy needed, whether he wanted to or not. The next morning, the Council made an announcement. Doyen would remain on Krell Prime under Council protection while he learned to use the precursor systems. Any unauthorized approach to the planet would be considered an act of war. Most species accepted this ruling, but the Vraxian Empire remained ominously silent. And far away, at the edge of the galaxy where stars grew thin and darkness reigned, something vast and hungry began to move. The Void Collective had tasted the energy signature of precursor technology activating after millions of years of silence. It remembered that signature, remembered the species that had escaped its hunger so long ago, and now it would come to see what new prey had inherited their tools. The warning came on a quiet morning, 3 weeks after Doyen claimed the armor. A deep space monitoring station at the Galactic Edge stopped transmitting. Council officials assumed it was a technical malfunction. Stations failed sometimes, especially ones so far from inhabited space. They sent a repair ship to investigate. That ship never reported back. 2 days later, an entire mining colony went silent. 3,000 beings from 4 different species, all living and working on a mineral-rich asteroid, simply stopped communicating. The Council sent a military patrol to check. They found the asteroid stripped clean, its surface covered in a black organic substance that their sensors could not identify. The colony was gone. Every structure, every ship, every living thing had vanished. By the time the patrol ship returned with its horrifying report, 3 more systems had gone dark. On Krell Prime, Doyen felt the attacks through the armor. The precursor database was connected to ancient sensors spread across the galaxy, machines that had watched and waited for millions of years. When the Void Collective began its advance, those sensors activated and fed information directly into Doyen's mind. He saw the attacks in his dreams, felt the terror of beings consumed by something they could not fight or understand. He called an emergency meeting with the Council representatives still on Krell Prime. Captain Mireille, Hyun, and a human xenobiologist named Jiwan attended, along with Council Arbiter Velis and ambassadors from a dozen major species. Doyen stood before them in the armor, no longer the uncertain engineer who had arrived months ago. The armor had changed him in ways beyond the physical. His voice carried authority now, and his eyes held knowledge that felt ancient. "The Void Collective has returned," he said without preamble. "They are attacking the outer systems, testing our defenses and gathering resources. This is just the beginning. Within 3 months, they will reach the populated core of the galaxy." "How do you know this?" demanded a reptilian ambassador whose name Doyen could never pronounce correctly. "The armor shows me. The precursors left sensors, and those sensors track the Void's movements. I can see their fleet growing, consuming everything in its path. Right now, they have perhaps 500 ships. In a month, they will have 5,000. In 2 months, 50,000. They grow exponentially." The room fell silent. Finally, Velis spoke, its mechanical voice unusually quiet. "What do we do? Our combined military might numbers in the tens of thousands of ships, but if what you say is true, we will be outnumbered within weeks. We fight with precursor technology. This armor is not the only thing they left behind. I have located weapons caches on 17 worlds, enough to equip a fleet that can hurt the Void. But we need time to retrieve them and learn how to use them." "Then we buy you time," Captain Mireille said. "The Council military can hold the line while you gather these weapons." "No," Doyen said firmly. "Conventional weapons barely scratch the Void. They are partially organic, able to regenerate damage almost as fast as it is inflicted. We need to hit them hard with precursor technology, or we will just be feeding them more resources to consume." A heavy silence followed. Then Torin, who had been standing quietly in the corner, stepped forward. The Vraxian warlord had recovered from his injuries and had remained on Krell Prime, ostensibly to observe, though Doyen suspected he was making sure the armor stayed in what Torin considered responsible hands. "I will gather warriors," Torin said. "Not just Vraxians, but fighters from every species willing to stand against this threat. We will form a vanguard fleet, while the Council military evacuates civilians from threatened systems. We will engage the Void and slow their advance. It may cost us everything, but it will buy time." "You would do this?" Doyen asked. "After everything?" Torin's expression was unreadable behind his scarred features. "I failed to claim the armor because I was not worthy, but I am still a warrior, and I will not let the galaxy fall while I draw breath. Besides, human, you will need someone to keep you alive long enough to use these weapons you speak of." Over the next 2 weeks, preparations consumed every waking moment. Torin proved as good as his word, assembling a fleet of volunteers from hundreds of worlds. They were not the Council's finest warships, but they were crewed by beings who understood what was at stake and were willing to die to protect their homes. Doyen worked without rest, coordinating the retrieval of precursor weapons from hidden caches. The armor let him function on minimal sleep, but Jiwan noticed the strain. She cornered him in the temple one evening, her face creased with concern. "You are pushing too hard," she said. "I have been studying the armor's effects on your body. It is changing you, Doyen. Your cellular structure is becoming more efficient. Your neural pathways are being rewritten. You are healing faster and thinking quicker. But there is a cost. If this continues, you might not be fully human anymore." "I know," Doyen said quietly. "The armor warned me. Full integration with precursor technology changes the user at a fundamental level. But we need this power to fight the void. What choice do I have?" "There is always a choice. You could refuse, let someone else wear the armor." "The armor chose me, G1. It will not accept anyone else now that we have bonded. Besides, I knew the cost when I put it on. Some things are worth sacrificing for." She had no answer to that. Only placed a hand on his armored shoulder in silent support. The Void Fleet reached the Tanis system on schedule, exactly as Doyen's calculations had predicted. Tanis was a thriving system with 6 billion inhabitants spread across 3 planets and 24 orbital stations. It was also a major trade hub, which made it strategically important and impossible to fully evacuate in the time available. Toran's Vanguard fleet met them there. 2,000 ships from 100 species armed with whatever they had and carrying crews who knew they were probably going to die. Against them came the Void, a swarm of organic ships that looked like they were grown rather than built, all writhing tentacles and glowing nodules that pulsed with stolen energy. The battle started badly. Conventional weapons damaged the Void ships but could not destroy them. Every wound healed within minutes, the organic hulls regenerating as if the attacks had never happened. Worse, when a council ship was destroyed, the Void consumed the wreckage, growing stronger from the materials and energy. The fleet was not just losing, it was feeding the enemy. Then Doyen arrived. He came not in a ship, but piloting a precursor fighter craft that the armor had unlocked from a hidden hangar on Krell Prime. The fighter was small, barely large enough for one person, but it moved through space like a living thing, dancing between Void attacks with impossible grace. Its weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen in millions of years. Beams of energy that did not just damage but unmade the Void ships on a molecular level. Doyen destroyed 5 ships in the first minute, then 10, then 20. Each kill was precise and total, leaving nothing for the Void to regenerate or reclaim. The tide of battle began to shift as the Void fleet realized it faced something it could not simply overwhelm with numbers. But Doyen was one fighter, and there were hundreds of Void ships. He could not be everywhere at once. A massive Void mothership, larger than any of the others, emerged from the rear of their formation. It was an organic mountain floating in space, covered in weapons and launching smaller craft like seeds from a pod. Doyen turned his fighter toward it, the armor calculating trajectories and weak points faster than thought. He accelerated to impossible speeds, dodging through a storm of fire that would have vaporized any normal ship. He reached the mothership and fired everything he had, pouring precursor energy into what the armor identified as the ship's central control node. The mothership exploded from within, its biological structure unable to contain the chain reaction. The blast was visible from the surface of Tanis Prime, a second sun briefly lighting the sky. When the light faded, the Void fleet was in disarray, smaller ships fleeing back toward deep space, their coordinating intelligence destroyed. Toran's fleet did not pursue. They had lost 400 ships and thousands of warriors, but they had won, barely and only because of Doyen. As he returned to the fleet in his fighter, exhausted and shaking inside the armor, Doyen understood something important. They could fight the Void, they could win battles, but every fight took more out of him, pushing him further from the human he had been. Jiwan's warning echoed in his mind. The armor was changing him. He could feel it now. Something foreign in his thoughts, not hostile but not entirely his own either. He was becoming a hybrid, part human, part precursor technology, part something new that had never existed before. In his quarters that night, Doyen looked at his hands through the armor's interface. They still moved like his hands, but the thoughts that directed them felt different, faster and colder, more efficient, more ruthless when necessary. He wondered how much of him would be left when this war finally ended, if he would even recognize himself anymore. But outside his window, Tanis Prime spun peacefully in space, its 6 billion inhabitants saved because he had been willing to change. That had to be worth something. That had to be worth everything. The victory at Tanis bought them time, but not much. The Void Collective regrouped and adapted, learning from its defeat. Within 2 weeks, it launched simultaneous attacks on 5 systems, spreading the defensive forces thin. Doyen could not be everywhere at once, and without him, battles turned into massacres. The galaxy was losing ground despite his best efforts. In the command center on Krell Prime, Doyen stood before a holographic map of the galaxy, watching red markers spread like a disease across the outer systems. Captain Mirai, Yan, and Jiwan stood with him, along with council representatives and military commanders from dozens of species. They all looked to him for answers, and he had only one left to give. "I found something in the precursor database," Doyen said, his voice tired but steady. "A weapon called the Nexus. It is located deep in void-controlled space near the galactic edge. The precursors built it as a last resort. A device that can sever the Void's hive-mind connection across light years. Without their collective intelligence coordinating them, the Void ships become mindless, easy to destroy. If such a weapon exists, why did the precursors not use it?" asked Velis. "Because activating it requires a sacrifice. Someone must merge with the Nexus, become part of it, to power the weapon and target the Void's consciousness. The precursors could not do it because they were evolving beyond physical form. They had already started the process when they realized the Nexus would not work for them. So they left it, hoping whoever inherited their technology would be willing to pay the price they could not." Silence filled the room. Everyone understood what Doyen was saying. To use the Nexus meant giving up everything, becoming a permanent part of an ancient machine. "No," Captain Mirai said flatly. "We will find another way." "There is no other way," Doyen replied gently. "I have spent 3 weeks searching the database for alternatives. The Nexus is the only weapon that can end this war quickly enough to save the core worlds. Without it, the Void will reach Earth, reach every inhabited planet within 3 months. Billions will die." "Then someone else can activate it," Yan said, his voice rough with emotion. "You have done enough, Doyen. Let someone else make this sacrifice. The Nexus is precursor technology. It will only accept someone bonded to their systems. It will only accept me." Doyen turned to face his friend, wishing he could remove the helmet so Yan could see his expression. "I knew this was coming. The armor showed me visions, possible futures. In every scenario where we win, I am connected to the Nexus. There is no other ending." Jiwan wiped tears from her face. "How long do we have?" "Before you would need to go?" "The Void's main fleet is massing at the edge of their controlled territory. In 1 week, they will launch a final assault on the galactic core. We need to strike the Nexus before then, which means we leave in 3 days." The plan came together quickly. Every available ship would join a massive armada, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Ships from species that had been enemies for centuries would fly side by side, united by the common threat of extinction. Their goal was simple, but nearly impossible. Fight their way through the Void fleet to reach the Nexus location, giving Doyen time to activate the weapon. Turan took command of the Vanguard fleet, now rebuilt with volunteers who had heard about the human in the precursor armor and wanted to fight beside him. The Vraxian warlord had become something unexpected, a believer in Doyen's cause, perhaps even a friend, though neither of them used that word. On the last night before departure, Doyen walked through the temple ruins of Krell Prime one final time. He found Hyun sitting on a fallen column looking up at the stars. "I remember when we were on that mining station near Mars," Hyun said without looking over. "You told me you joined the space service because you wanted to see wonders that no human had ever seen before. Did you ever imagine it would lead here?" "No," Doyen said honestly, sitting beside his friend. The armor made the gesture awkward, but he managed. "I thought I would spend my life studying old ruins and writing reports no one would read. I never wanted to be a warrior or a hero. Heroes rarely want to be heroes. That is what makes them heroes." Jan finally looked at him, eyes red. "I am supposed to protect you. That has been my job for 5 years. How do I protect you from this?" "You cannot. But you can make sure it means something. Win the battles that come after. Help rebuild what the Void destroys. Hyun. Live and remember that someone thought you were worth saving." They sat in silence for a long time, 2 friends watching stars that might not exist tomorrow if they failed. The Armada departed on schedule, 10,000 ships flying in formation toward the galactic edge. The journey took 4 days, and every day they received reports of more systems falling to the Void. The enemy was accelerating its assault, as if it sensed what was coming. They found the Void's main fleet waiting for them in empty space between stars. It was the largest concentration of Void ships anyone had seen, a dark cloud that seemed to swallow light itself. Sensors counted over 100,000 vessels, and more were emerging from deeper in their territory. "All ships, this is Toran," the Vraxian's voice boomed over the fleet-wide channel. "Today we fight not for glory or conquest, but for survival. Every species in this fleet has differences, old hatreds, and new grudges. Forget them all. Today we are one people, one army, standing against the darkness. Protect the human. He is our only hope." The battle began with a crash of metal and energy that lit up the void like a new star being born. Ships died by the hundreds in the first minutes, but the Armada pushed forward, creating a corridor through the Void fleet through sheer determination and sacrifice. Doyen flew his precursor fighter at the tip of the spear, his weapons cutting through enemy ships while his sensors guided the fleet toward the Nexus location. He saw Toran's flagship take a direct hit, saw it tumble out of formation with engines dead and hull breached. The Vraxian's voice came over a private channel, barely audible through static. "Go, human. I bought you time. Use it well." "Toran," Doyen called back, but there was no response. He wanted to turn back, to save his unlikely ally, but dozens of other ships were already moving to intercept Toran's tumbling vessel. Sunho, a human tactical officer from one of Earth's cruisers, took command of that rescue operation, his calm voice coordinating the effort even as the battle raged around them. Doyen flew on, guilt and grief mixing with determination. He could not save everyone. He could only complete the mission and make their sacrifices mean something. The Nexus appeared ahead, a structure the size of a small moon, ancient and dark against the stars. Doyen felt the armor responding to its presence, systems activating that had slept since the precursors left. He landed his fighter in a docking bay that opened like an eye, remembering his approach. Inside, the Nexus was vast and empty, all towering machinery and pulsing energy conduits leading to a central chamber. Doyen walked slowly through corridors that felt familiar, despite having never been here before. The armor knew this place. It had been designed to connect with the Nexus to complete this exact task. He reached the central chamber and stopped. In the center stood a pillar of light, pure and white, reaching from floor to ceiling. Around it, holographic text appeared in the precursor language, instructions that Doyen understood perfectly. "Enter the light. Surrender yourself. Become the weapon." Doyen looked at the pillar for a long moment, thinking about everything he was about to give up. He would never see Earth again, never eat dinner with friends, never grow old or fall in love or experience any of the small joys that made life worth living. He would exist here in this machine, aware but alone for the rest of time. But outside, the battle raged. Good beings were dying to give him this chance. Toran had sacrificed everything. Hyun was out there fighting. Captain Mirai was coordinating the fleet. Jiwon was analyzing void behavior to give the warriors every possible advantage. They had all given him this moment. He could not waste it. Doyen stepped into the light. The connection was instant and total. His consciousness expanded, stretching across light years, feeling every void ship, every interconnected node of their hive mind. He felt the Nexus power flowing through him, felt himself becoming part of something far larger than one human life. His memories did not fade, but they became distant, like looking at photographs of someone else's life. The void noticed him. Their collective consciousness turned its attention toward the Nexus, recognizing the threat. A massive shape formed in the mental space where Doyen now existed, an avatar of the void's intelligence, ancient and hungry and utterly alien. "You cannot stop us," the void spoke in thoughts rather than words. "We have consumed galaxies. We are inevitable." Maybe, Doyen thought back, feeling the Nexus responding to his will. But not today. Not here. He activated the weapon. Energy exploded outward from the Nexus in a wave that traveled at impossible speeds, passing through normal matter, but devastating the quantum connections that bound the void's hive mind together. Across light years, in every system where the void had spread, their ships suddenly stopped moving. Their coordination shattered, their collective intelligence severed into millions of isolated fragments. The battle outside the Nexus turned in an instant.